I was just interested in, after being in Poland and researching what was gone, I wanted to meet living communities. Growing up in Israel and in the United States, I only had contacts with people who left Poland or the former Soviet Union and not people who stayed. So I was really interested in people who stayed there.
Mir das Lied vom goldenen Land. Amor fleckt meine Mame mit Herz und Gefühl. Das Lied mir singt, euch still es mir still. Und herrlich das Lied ganz schwach von mir macht. Mein teure Mame, ihr lieblich Gestalt, ihr herziger Schmächel in herzlicher Blick. Sie decken mir auf mein vergangenen Glück.
До войны население Дрогобыча равнялось приблизительно.
Before the war, the population of Drohobych was around 42,000 people. Interestingly enough, it consisted of three ethnic groups, more or less equal in size: Poles, Jews and Ukrainians.
По этому поводу польский поэт Marian Hemar, он, конечно, и не Marian, и не Hemar.
Polish poet Marian Hemar, who was a Jew living in Lvov, called Drohobych a town and a half because of these three ethnic groups. Before the war, around 1939, there were about 13.5 thousand Jews in Drohobych. There were about 12 synagogues in Drohobych. It's even difficult to say now how many of them we had, because there was one big synagogue, then small ones and very small ones. I don't even know all of them. There must have been around 12 in Drohobych.
Отдана еврейской общине в 1865
The big synagogue given to the Jewish community in 1865 was a magnificent building. It was considered to be one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in Poland.
Внутри это был, когда там включали свет, и этот...
When they turned on the light there, the ceiling was dark blue. The color of night sky started with golden stars with a silver crescent. The columns were painted dark blue, and the inside parts of the columns were yellow. So, by mere chance, they turned out to be yellow and blue. No one thought about it, however. So, when they turned on the lights, there were huge chandeliers there. It was a stunning sight.
В том месте, где сейчас синагога большая, там когда-то стояло очень много мелких.
The place where the big synagogue stands now was once strewn with many tiny derelict houses. The poorest of Jews lived there. They walked around the town asking for alms. There were lots of them. This town quarter was called Len. It's still called like that.
Откуда это происходит? Лан — это древняя...
Where does it come from? Len is an ancient Polish land measure. When Casimir the Great allowed Jews to live in Poland, Danilowski, the head of Drohobych or Burgomaster, allowed Jews to live in Drohobych and allocated one land of land to them.
Один лан имеет приблизительно чуть-чуть больше 15 гектаров. Там эта и синагога стоит, и следующее здание за ней.
One land was approximately a bit more than 15 hectares. There is a synagogue there, and next to it a Jewish hospital. The next building, which some dentists transformed into a posh villa, was a so-called Jewish day care center for poor children of the quarter, who stayed there all day long, received an education there. They were taught, fed, but went home for the night. Besides, there was a huge Jewish orphanage. Today, it is a department of the University of Management, an enormous building. Children lived very well there. They were all dressed in the same way, and they had their own school. Children were given classes. They lived there all the time. They were orphans. There was a great synagogue there. This building still remains, but I don't know what is in this hall now.
Богатейшее учреждение, которое содержалось за счет...
That synagogue was very good and rich. It was supported by alms of Drohobych Jews. The director of this institution was Engineer Bauer, the chief engineer of the Galicia oil refinery. Now it's the biggest plant of the town, called Второй завод, plant number 2.
Чем вообще евреи в Дрогобыче?
What did Jews do in Drohobych? First of all, most of them were merchants. Most shops in Drohobych belonged to Jews. Most wonderful rich houses belonged to them too.
Расцвет Дрогобыча начался.
Drohobych started to prosper when at the end of the 19th century they discovered oil in Borislav and built huge oil refineries in Drohobych.
И тогда Дрогобыч зажил, так сказать, на полную мощь. Тогда Дрогобыч был...
That's when Drohobych began to flourish. Drohobych was quite a rich town then. There were, of course, very wealthy people who had shares in oil field in Borislav, in their oil refineries, and had beautiful houses built for themselves. However, these rich and even middle-class people didn't live in land. They lived on all the streets of Drohobych. On the former Mickiewicz Street, now Shevchenko Street, there is now a building of the town library. It's been a library since the Soviet times, but before that it used to be a Jewish old people's house. And the middle part of this building was a synagogue, in which my uncle, Dr. Bernard Schreyer, was a rabbi. He also taught Moses religion in Polish at the Władysław Jagiello State Gymnasium, which was perfectly normal. I'd say that until 1939 everything was okay. Poles, Jews and Ukrainians went to the same class together. No one asked, "Who are you? Why are you here?" But during the class of religion, Poles stayed in their classroom. Ksiądz, the Polish Catholic priest, came to teach them. Ukrainians had their own classroom, where their priest came, and Jews had their own classroom, too, where Bernard Schreyer taught, as I've already said.
Никто никого не спрашивал, кто ты. И нормальным явлением было такое, например, что во время Пасхи ко мне могли прийти мои знакомые ребята, чтобы их угостить мацой. Так же самое, как...
No one asked you, "Who are you?" My friends could come to see me during Pesach to help themselves to matzah. Just as you could go to your friend's place at Easter to eat eggs. It was absolutely normal.
Можно было иногда встретить в городе наклейку «Не покупай».
You could come across a sticker in town, "Don't buy from a Jew." But if you wanted to buy something cheaper, you went to a Jew. All the more so, as most shops were Jewish.